Your cat is sitting near you, calm and relaxed, and everything seems fine. Then something happens. Maybe you moved your hand too quickly, or you stood up suddenly, or a sound occurred somewhere in the house. And in less than a second, your cat is gone, not slowly retreating, not walking away with dignity, but bolting as if something genuinely threatening just entered the room. You look around and see nothing. You feel, if you are honest, slightly confused and maybe a little rejected. And your cat reappears 10 minutes later, acting as if nothing happened, ready to sit near you again, as if the whole episode never occurred. Most people read this as proof that cats are unpredictable or skittish or simply wired for chaos. But what your cat just revealed in that moment of sudden flight tells you something specific and psychologically significant about their inner life, and it has almost nothing to do with you personally. Hello friends, I want to thank everyone who watches this video and supports the channel. Every like, every comment, and every share means more than you think for me and for my dreams. Without delay, let's begin. To understand why cats bolt suddenly and seemingly without cause, you first need to understand something fundamental about how the feline nervous system processes sensory information and generates behavioral responses. Cats possess what neuroscientists call a highly reactive startle response, a neurological process that is faster and more sensitive than almost anything comparable in domesticated animals. The pathway from sensory input to physical response in a cat bypasses the slower reasoning parts of the brain entirely. It runs through the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for threat detection and emotional response, and it produces a full-body physical reaction before any conscious evaluation has taken place. This means that when your cat bolts, they are not making a decision to run. The running is already happening before any part of their brain has had the opportunity to assess whether the situation actually warranted it. This distinction matters enormously for how we understand the behavior. A cat that bolts at a sudden sound or movement is not being dramatic, and they are not demonstrating that they distrust you or feel unsafe in your home in any meaningful long-term sense. They are demonstrating the operation of a threat detection system that is tuned for speed above all else. In an environment where predators can appear and close distance in fractions of a second, the survival value of responding first and evaluating second is obvious. The cost of a false alarm running from something harmless is trivial. The cost of failing to respond to a genuine threat is potentially fatal. So the system is calibrated to err heavily on the side of action, and the result in a domestic context is a cat that sometimes sprints away from a plastic bag, a cough, or the sound of something falling in the next room. What is actually being hidden in that moment of sudden flight, and this is the part that most owners never think to examine, is the gap between the cat's sensory experience and the reality of their environment. Your cat is not running from what is actually there. They are running from what their nervous system classified the input as in the approximately 40 milliseconds it took to generate a response. And that classification is based not on a careful analysis of the current situation, but on pattern matching against a vast library of stored sensory associations, some of which were built during early development and some of which were formed through individual experience. Sound that resembles something that once preceded a frightening event will trigger the same response as the original event, even in a completely different context, even years later. Even when the cat's rational assessment, if such a thing can be applied to a cat, would find nothing alarming in the current situation at all. This is where early developmental experience becomes critically important. Research into feline behavioral development has consistently shown that the socialization window, the period roughly between 2 and 7 weeks of age, during which a kitten's nervous system is most receptive to forming foundational associations about what the world contains and what is safe within it, has a disproportionate influence on how reactive that cat's startle response will be for the rest of its life. Kittens who experience a wide range of sounds, movements, textures, and social interactions during this window develop nervous systems that are, broadly speaking, less likely to classify novel stimuli as threatening. Kittens who experience limited variety or who encounter frightening events during this period may develop startle responses that are both more sensitive and more durable, persisting into adulthood as a kind of perceptual legacy of what those early weeks taught their nervous system about the world. Imagine a cat adopted from a shelter at 4 months old in their early weeks, before the shelter, before the adoption, before the quiet apartment where they now live a comfortable life. Something happened, a loud environment, an unpredictable presence, a sensory landscape that registered as unsafe. The specific event does not have to have been dramatic. It simply had to occur during a period when the nervous system was actively writing its foundational map of what to expect from the world. Now, years later, in a home that is genuinely safe and with a person who genuinely cares for them, that cat still bolts at specific sounds. Not all sounds, specific ones, because those specific acoustic patterns were catalogued during that early period as belonging to the category of things that precede something bad. The association was never unwritten. The environment changed. The record did not. Here is the insight that tends to shift the emotional framing for most owners. A cat that bolts suddenly and then returns relatively quickly is a cat that is demonstrating something important about the quality of their attachment to you and to their environment. The return is not incidental. It is the behavioral evidence that the flight was processed as a false alarm and that the cat's internal assessment of their home as fundamentally safe was not overwritten by the single startling event. A cat that bolts and does not return, that hides for extended periods or refuses to re-engage with the person or space associated with the triggering event, is displaying a different pattern entirely, one that suggests the startle was significant enough to temporarily destabilize their sense of environmental security. The cat that comes back in 10 minutes and settles near you again is, in the language of feline emotional regulation, telling you that what they have built with you and in this space is more stable than a single startling moment. The rebound behavior that follows a sudden bolt is one of the clearest behavioral indicators of what attachment researchers call a secure base, the psychological foundation of stability from which an attached individual can experience disturbance and recover. A securely attached cat does not need the absence of disruption to feel safe. They need the presence of a reliable anchor that remains consistent through and after the disruption. If you are that anchor for your cat, their return to you following a frightening moment is not simply a return to comfort. It is a behavioral expression of trust in the stability of what you represent to them. They left because their nervous system demanded it. They came back because something in them knew where safe was. Consider a scenario that many cat owners will find familiar. You drop something in the kitchen, a pan, a bottle, something loud that hits the floor unexpectedly. Your cat vanishes. You clean up and sit back down on the couch. 5 minutes pass, then 10, and then from wherever they disappeared to, your cat walks back in, glances at the space where the sound occurred, glances at you, and comes to sit nearby or even on your lap. That approach is not random. They re-entered the room and made an assessment. The acoustic event was over. The environment appeared unchanged, and the person who has always represented safety and consistency was there, calm, present, unchanged. Those inputs together told your cat that the disturbance was transient and that the underlying reality of their world, which is secure, had not changed. The return is the conclusion of a full emotional processing cycle, and you were part of what made that cycle possible. What most cat owners carry away from a sudden bolt episode is a mild feeling of being startled themselves and a vague sense that their cat is unpredictable. What is worth carrying away instead is something more meaningful. A cat that bolts and returns is a cat navigating a nervous system that is working exactly as designed, responding to perceived threat with immediate action, and then recovering quickly because the environment they live in and the relationship at the center of it provides the stability required for recovery. The bolt is not a failure of trust. The return is evidence of it. Your cat does not run from you when they bolt. They run from a signal their body could not ignore. And the fact that they come back, to your couch, to your lap, to whatever spot near you they have claimed as their own, means something that a 10-minute disappearance should never be allowed to obscure. They always knew where home was. It just took their nervous system a few minutes to catch up with what the rest of them already understood. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help me achieve my life dream. Because at the end of the day, my friend, we both love cats. And goodbye.